Hello, everyone, and as always, welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. Today, back into Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific Admirals Edition. This is our play by email challenge with our good friend Lodric. And it sounds like some of you have really enjoyed Lodric's videos. Someone mentioned that Lodric is quite funny without knowing it. So that's always a good thing. I like the sound of it. Now, I haven't watched those. I'm not going to watch them. Yeah, I find that it changes the way I play. I don't want to know anything. I want true fog of war. Makes it a lot more fun for me. I'm not on here for my ego. And so, keep letting me know if you're enjoying those videos. I'll keep linking to Lodric's setups. And I'm going to say, Lodric, hold on. Don't put on the combat resolutions. That's got to be on our channel. But yeah, his setups every time we'll have him linked, and you can watch that. I guess Lodric is a German engineer. Now, you never want to fight a German engineer in a logistics battle. That's rule number one of warfare. But it's going to be a good challenge, and it's been a good challenge so far. So this time, this is going to be our recap and it's going to be our setup. I thought this time we'd really focus on all of the air units we have on the map. I'm not necessarily going to do a specific part of the map. I thought we'd go around and talk generally about air units, and we'll go and look at every air unit to the extent we can that we have on the map and talk about how you set up your air units, what they're used for, how you want to use them, just some ideas about the air war. But before we get into that, let's go look at our recap from the last turn. Now, if you watch the combat resolution, we had quite a surface battle off of Rangoon. Well, really, the game shows it off of Port Blair. We were a little closer to Port Blair, but it was a fight over Rangoon. Now, the reason I sent many of our British surface fleet members over towards Rangoon is he has been blocking our supply in there. Well, Rangoon is so important. You have got to get supply into Rangoon because you just can't have six or 700 strength points of your Burmese forces just essentially capitulate. So you've got to get supply in there, and it becomes a real question on how to do it once the Japanese player can establish some kind of surface presence or submarine presence up there. Now, we've already lost stuff going into Rangoon, so we sent over the surface fleet. Luckily, we did get the carrier, the Hermes out. I guess it's pronounced Hermes, I've been told. But that was a lot of fun. It's our first surface battle. We don't really know what he may end up losing there. We know that he had heavy fires on some things, but they're not showing anything as sunk. We actually have ships shown as sunk. So anyway, we'll look at that over here on ship sunk. The last turn, so the 2-day turn, we ran a little over 5,000 sorties. The Japanese close to 8,000 sorties as he continues to build that lead, the number of sorties. As I've mentioned many times before, he's doing a great job with his bombing campaign, something the AI probably is not aggressive enough with. He lost nothing air to air. That's got to change. Destroyed on the field, we had one, he had zero. Destroyed by flak, he had two, we had none. He had six destroyed. By operational losses, we had four. Now, of course, we've got fog of war, so we don't know exactly what he's lost, but usually these will start to filter towards the right number. Let's put it that way. We've got 128 political points. I have spent a lot of political points recently getting things off the U.S. West Coast and into the Pacific. We'll talk about those probably in a future episode as we go into which islands we're defending, how I'm looking at the defense of the South Pacific now. His score 79.88. We're at 95.49. Now keep in mind we're going to lose 1,800 points when we lose Singapore, so things are looking pretty equal. Now the Japanese player will pull ahead of you in 1942. There's really no getting around that. Now you wouldn't want him to do it this quickly, and why is he doing it this quickly? Well, we still control, obviously, the vast majority of bases, although he's going to continue to cut into that number turn by turn. Uh, Aircraft points lost. We need to get this closer to parity. He's running bombing runs. We're not. He should be losing more planes. We have gotten absolutely shredded in China, unlike anything I've ever experienced as an Allied player. Um, but through his bombing campaign, really, and he's bomb, 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 and then he weakens them enough to just kind of walk over these Chinese forces. We've got to get the Chinese forces settled. We've got to get them in a base. We've got to get anti-aircraft to the extent we have it. You don't have a lot of anti-aircraft as the Chinese when you're moving them or at their bases. So we've got to try to get them all settled so they're not moving because they make better targets or they take more losses when they're on the move, obviously. Allied ship sunk 290 now. He's almost got us up to 300. Now, historically, the Allies, I think, lost well over 1,000 ships. But, this is climbing too quickly. Now, we've put a lot of stop to that, but. We've lost stuff coming out. Well, we lost a lot at the Philippines. You're going to lose most of the Dutch East Indies ships at some point. But we've lost some other stuff to his submarining and whatnot. We've kind of gotten that all under control. But we did lose a lot of transports out of Rangoon this time. Now, what was that all about? Well, we had transports sitting at Rangoon. When he had a submarine off Rangoon, I kept them there in port. They were fine. As I brought the surface fleet over, I decided, okay, we're going to try to get those transports out of there. Not realizing Lodric had a big surface fleet out there as well. The two surface fleets battled, and the transports took the brunt. Now, there were no troops on those transports; they were completely empty. So ultimately, again, it's one of those losses. It's not a fatal loss. It wouldn't cause us to lose the war or something. It's not even a big deal when it comes to that portion of it. But if this game comes down to points, they're worth a decent amount of points, and so that's a problem. We're only showing two Japanese ships as sunk. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not true. Now, I know Logic had sent me a message at some point saying, that I had lost 5 battleships. Well, I haven't. We've only lost 2 battleships, and so, that just goes to show you the different fogs of war. Now, if you're watching Logic's stream, you probably know exactly how many ships he's lost. But I like to play like this is correct. And so, I mean, it's just 2 of 20. We lost 2,000 points almost just from the amount of ships sunk. Now, this will start to even way up as we get into late 42, 43, and we can start going after his cargo a little stronger. But right now, it's not looking great. Ship sunk last turn. Let's go take a look at this. A lot of ships went down, but most of these were those PT boats up. These were near Koapang. Okay, so we lost a lot near Koapang of these PT ships. You're always kind of going to lose those eventually at any kind of disputed port. We lost the Jasmine, which is too bad. So this was off Port Blair. This was the great. They still call it the Battle of Rangoon, but the game shows it off Port Blair really. But we were fighting over Rangoon. Jasmine went down. Now these are those transport ships I was trying to get out of there. And if you look at the amount of points this added up to, it was a lot. Now again, there were no troops on them. They were empty. But this is a real kick in the pants. I mean, that's 48, 60, 72 points, those add up. We lost another sub that had gotten hit at Manila and was trying to make it back to Pearl Harbor. Flotation eventually gave out and the Seawolf went down. In the Battle of Rangoon itself, we lost the Glasgow, the Caledon, or it could be Solidon, but it's probably Caledon and Colombo. We lost those three. That's another, 70 or 80 points there, and then a couple of other PT boats. Oh my goodness, Lodric, you're on us here, my friend. That's all right. We'll fight back. Um, Always make sure you're looking at the group withdraw schedule because you're the one that has to withdraw this stuff. You can disband it, take it elsewhere. Now, these Cobras that are in LA will come off the map. We've got these two groups at Chungking that we probably really should get off the map this time. The B-17 Fortresses, we'll just go ahead and disband this group. Where is that? Hmm. Now, see, this returns in May 42nd. It's essentially just becomes a different group. Where is the rest of this thing? Well, we're going to look at the air war. We'll come back to that. We must have a part of this group. Let's hit that again. What are more detachments exist? So it's detached off somewhere. Where is this thing? It's based at Pearl Harbor. Huh. Okay, well, I'll have to come back and look at that one. But you manually have to withdraw some of this stuff. Um, So we'll look at that. That's for the planes. Aircraft losses, we can go look at all of this at some point. Top pilots, we still don't have an ace. We've got Grover out here at Warhawks. I believe this guy's coming out of Clark Field, if I had to guess, U.S. Army. We got a Brit flying Buffaloes. That's probably out of Singapore. He has now been killed in action. We've got several of these guys that we're getting close to aces that have been killed. Shoot, stop closing out of that. Ship withdrawal. Let's see. Oh, I did that backwards. All right. These don't pop up that often. The Joseph T. Dickman, the Queen Elizabeth. I've actually got the Queen Elizabeth out in a task force carrying stuff. The Emerald, the Drag. You've got some things, but not many ships. It's mainly ground units and plane squadrons. Okay, enough with that. Let's go talk. Let's go over to the U.S. East Coast. All right. And let's just start here. Let's see what we have here. We've got absolutely nothing here. I have got massive numbers of task forces with big endurances, and usually you want, decent speeds going through the pipes to Cape Town. So eastern US to Cape Town. As you can see here, we've got a lot of stuff either coming into the US East Coast or out of the US East Coast. You can also use the East Coast to train pilots, but we just don't currently have anything up there now. I wanted to do these off-map bases really quickly, and then we'll get into the air war. Down at Cristobal, we currently have nothing. Now you can see there's a lot of fuel and a lot of supply that starts to build up at Cristobal. I also have some task forces that come to Cristobal, and then you can use it can come through the Panama Canal and then end up, going to Christmas Island or Palmyra. Sometimes that's the fastest way to get out to those guys. Up across the way at Balboa, we do have some AKs that are here. They are unloading at Balboa. Now, why am I doing this? Well, these guys were coming from Pearl Harbor. They actually already had stuff on. I was taking them back to the U.S. West Coast, and I thought, you know what? Let's put a little bit of stuff into Balboa. Now, when this is done, it's going to just go across the canal to Cristobal. I'll probably have it pick up at Cristobal, and then we can spread them out, maybe, 4 different task forces, and go to islands down here, whether it be Tahiti, Palmyra, Christmas Island, or they've got good enough endurances. We may just send them up to the East Coast. But for now, I've just got them retiring to Cristobal. We did get a new ship in port. Let's see what we got here. It's the Vermont. It's got the same speed here. So let's just put the Vermont in. It's going to have the same speed. Now, this is a ship you would almost certainly want to go. Let's cancel that, actually. Get out of there, Vermont. All right. Let's form a new task force. Let's form a new task force. Cargo, done. You see all of his subs out here? We uncovered those, and we'll talk about that at some point here. But we're sending every damn destroyer we've got in the game over here to try to take out subs. That's right off Pearl Harbor. Luckily, he hasn't gotten anything in a long time with that screen. Famous last words, right? Okay, let's send the Vermont. Let's just get it going. Let's get it going up to the U.S. East Coast. Those 14,700 endurance ships with almost a 5,000 capacity and 12 speed, those pretty much all go up to the East Coast. Okay, there's nothing down here at Port Stanley. There really never is. We've got stuff that's coming out here. You can see these are airplane squadrons that we are taking down to Auckland. And so I've got a lot of planes going to Auckland. We've also got a lot of stuff up here, but we're just going to kind of pass over that for now because we're going to go look at our air war. Now, just big picture over the air war, which is your air units are essentially one of three things. They're either fighters, bombers, or you or the third category is utility, and utility would be like recon or transport. Okay, so let's just call it four different kinds of planes: fighters, bombers, recon, uh, did I say escort? Transport. So those are your four different kinds of planes. Okay, fighters, you're going to either have escort bombers, you're going to have them sweep, which means they kind of go out by themselves. They try to draw up the enemy aircraft and do air to air combat. So they're either going to escort bombers, they're going to sweep over areas, or they're going to do something called running cap. And running cap is when you're just defensively flying in a zone over an area. All right. So let's go look at our aircraft here in San Diego. And what have I done? We'll just look at the big overall aircraft breakout here. Um, these are all USN Fleet Air West, and in this game it's very important the commands that they have, and you'll see these little air units down here. You've got counters on the map that are their commands, and so let's go look at this command. It's USN Fleet Air West, so this is US Navy Fleet Air West. These by and large are all restricted to the US West Coast. Why is that? Well, the developers, I think, in their wisdom, didn't want you to be able to take every bit of all of these aircraft and put them out in the Pacific. They wanted it to stay somewhat historically accurate. Now, in a lot of cases, they'll allow you to buy out aircraft. And what do I mean by that? You can spend political points to change the command of these units. And once you change them, these air units, and once you change them, they then are no longer restricted to a certain place. They may become restricted to another place depending on which command you put them in, but they're no longer restricted to the place of the command. Now you can see up here on the counter for USN Air West, it is attached to West Coast Command restricted. All right. And it's not lit up. So you can't buy this out. This headquarters is staying on the US West Coast. There's no other place for it to go. Now you can move it. You don't have to keep it in San Diego. You could put it in LA. Hell, you could put it in Bakersfield if you want to. Um, but what do these commands do? Well, they help uh, as you're training pilots, which is a big part of this game. They also give aviation support. Now, for every plane that you have at a base, you want to have 1 point of aviation support if you can. That helps lower operational losses. It helps them get repaired, whether maintenance or damaged, faster. And so you want to have these aviation support points, and you get a lot of those from air commands. Okay, you can see his command radius is 5, and so he will give whatever benefits of command that they get, whether it be that they train faster, they recover from fatigue faster, there's all kinds of different leadership qualities that these lead. Now you can change the leader. Here's the commander, and you can see here what's his deal. 45 leadership, 43 inspiration. Now this is on a 0 to 100 scale. His admin is 52, aggression 41, land is 20. Well, his land doesn't matter as much. We really want his air to be good. So anyway, this is that command, and it's got total, number of men in it, and it's based at places. It's just like every other counter in the game. This is like looking at the back of this counter, and these are all of the stats of this counter. Okay, so I've got USN Air West here. So I've brought all of the planes that were originally assigned to USN Air West here to San Diego, and I usually put USN Air West in San Diego. I put fourth fighter in Los Angeles. I put fourth bomber in San Francisco. These are the original commands. I put 5th Bomber back here at Ogden just to train. These are the big B-17 bombers. And then I put 2 U.S. fighter up in Seattle. Those are the main commands that you have at the start of the game for your aircraft on the U.S. West Coast. A lot of stuff has not arrived yet. When I say stuff, a lot of command counters have not arrived yet. They will filter in over time. Okay, so let's look at the aircraft in San Diego. We've got this fighter unit, all right? Now, this is kind of an interesting one to start with because it's got more going on than the usual fighter unit because as you see here, it's carrier capable, it's not yet carrier trained. All right. Carrier capable means obviously you can load these on to one of our carriers. Then you have to train them, though. There is a distinction there. Just because they're capable doesn't mean your pilots know how to land on an aircraft carrier. So you've got to start training your pilots up to do that. Now, it's hard to do right at the start because you don't have many carriers and you need to sort of use them all, and so it's hard to find space to train. So these guys are still sitting here in San Diego. I've loaded another group of these fighters that you start with in U.S. Air Fleet West onto the Yorktown, which sailed out here just recently. So they're on their training. We didn't have enough room on here. Now, most of your U.S. carriers early on have 90 potential planes that they can load on. You really don't want to go over that because you'll start taking operational losses. Now, remember when I said you could buy these out? This, when it gets on a carrier, you're going to have to buy it out. I did buy out the other one. And let's just go out here and look at that carrier. And here it is. There is the Yorktown out here coming with a bunch of destroyers. And it was this Wildcat group that I loaded on here, VMF 111. As you can see, I bought it into independent. So I spent the political points and I made it independent. Usually on carriers, you want to do that because there's no quote unquote air command on a carrier. So just flip them over to independent. Okay. Um, Now then, a few other things. What is this any or automatic? Automatic means the game, if you lose pilots, the game automatically replaces them. Now, I do need to get some more pilots into this group, and I also want to get it out of the replacement group. What is replacement? Replacement are the guys that have been already trained or started to train for carriers. Maybe they lost their plane, so somehow being shot down, or just because that squadron got eliminated or whatever the case may be. So we want to go out of replacement. You can also go out of reserve or TRACOM as it's called, or any. So it'll just grab any pilot, but it'll look for requesting a veteran, major skills, air, defensive, strafing. We'll get to pilots here in a minute, but we're going to do this and then we could select them manually if we wanted to, but we'll just keep that on automatic. Trained 50 plus, train rookie 60 plus. This is the kind of pilot it will pick. Now, experience. It won't light up if you don't have any. See, or well, it'll light up red, right? And so elite is 90 plus. This is the kind of pilot it will pick. So rookie, there are none of those. We do have some experience. So let's put experienced in there, 70 plus, automatic. Now you got to watch this. If you're going to pick it like this, you may actually, let's actually go down a little bit. Now we don't have any rookies. These guys are just training. So I think maybe I will just have it on trained 50 plus. You just don't want them to grab somebody that is like a 30 for air-to-air combat. And these are the main skills that are needed for fighter pilots that are out on a carrier capable. And now we've got them training. So let's go ahead and look at these guys. What do we have them doing? Training escort, because a lot of what they're going to be doing is escorting the bombers that you have on the Yorktown out and protecting them. Okay, so training escort. Eventually, we'll just put them on escort. We could also put them on sweep, or we could give them a patrol level, but we'll talk about that more. Altitude 5,000 feet. How did I determine that? Well, I think that most people that first start this game All of this is the biggest confusion that they have. They'll say, what altitude am I supposed to be flying at? What range, what range? What are the patrol levels? These are your main orders. Okay, this is what they do first. This is what they do second. You could peel off certain, and let's just put this on escort for a minute. You got to take this off 100% training. Let's put it on escort. So the first thing it's always going to do, if there is escort to be run or sweep, if we want to sweep, now on sweep we can select a target. Um, the but if there's escort to be done, they'll do that first. If they're not doing that, 50% of the time they'll run cap, and that is that kind of defensive cap over the top of wherever their base is to a maximum radius of 5. That's that's their normal radius is 5. Extended radius is 6. Okay. Maximum range, you can fly that far, but only when you're transferring bases. All right. These are the two numbers you worry about, 6 and 5. It gives you a maximum altitude, but that never really comes into play. How do you pick your altitude? Well, usually what I look at is the altitude maneuver modifier, right? And what this is telling you is how maneuverable the plane is at different altitudes. And so if you look at this, you say, wow, okay, this plane is just as maneuverable at 15,000 feet as it is at 3,000 feet or anything less than 10K. So we may as well go up as high as we can. Now, the reason is in air to air combat, you get a huge advantage from coming from above. I was never a fighter pilot, but my understanding is that in air-to-air combat, when you can come from above, it's a huge advantage because you can see everything below you, obviously. If you're looking up, first of all, it's hard to fly a plane looking up over the top of yourself, but you can't really, your depth perception's all off, etc. So, also, you can't fire on anything above you for the most part, right? So there's a big advantage, and there's definitely a big advantage in this game from coming from higher. So you really many times, and we'll talk about why you wouldn't want to do this, but many times you want your fighter set at the best altitude you can for maneuverability. We could even take these up to 20K, but you just got to be, well, hell, we could take them to 32K if we want, but we really, really lose maneuverability as we start to go up altitudes. All right. So this is our training group, though. We're going to take this off. We'll go back to training escort. We want it to train escort. We want that range to be 0. Always do that. And we want the training, always have that at 100 and range at 0 when you're training anything. All right. What's the other thing that you look at on these cards? Your pilots. All right. And we looked at for what these guys are doing, their major skills should be air, defense, so air to air combat, defensive, and strafing potentially. All right. Now we're training for escort, but if we were training for sweep, you may want strafing to be a little bit better potentially. Um, okay. Let's look at the pilots again. What are we looking for here? You can see they've got all kinds of stats. So what's important here? Well, here's your fatigue. Okay, how many kills they've got. So these are just, that's fun. How many missions they've run. All right. Then you see general overall experience right here. And they're colored based on whether it's going up or in this case, when it's this orangish color, it means they trained on this time, but they didn't increase. When it's green, they increase this time, and you can tell how your training's paying off. You also get an average of all of your pilots that are in this squadron. Okay, so when we look here, the major here, this guy is our squadron leader. He's got the asterisks here. He's a major. TJ Walker. All right, he's our squad leader. He also has the most experience. Okay, he's right at the top up here at air to air. We have a few guys that are a little bit better than him, including Lane, who's a 64. But remember, this is one of the main attributes we want for fighter pilots on carriers. So experience, air. Now, naval bombing doesn't really come into play here. The fighters are not going to be doing naval bombing. Naval search, Not a big deal, obviously either. Recon, ASW, transport, none of this matters for a fighter pilot on a carrier. Else does matter? Well, strafe and defensiveness. Now, are they running cap? Are they being defensive? How good they are at that, it kind of adds into and works hand in hand with how good they are at air-to-air combat. And you can see here Walker is actually quite good. So we're training all of these guys, and you can see the training happening each turn. Did they improve? Did they not improve? Now, it's not unusual. You may say, oh my God, none of these guys improved their experience. Well, that's okay. I mean, some terms that will happen, but you can see air to air, several of the guys got better, and defensiveness, several got better. 2-day turns, they're not always going to get better every time, but this is your pilots. Now, down here, now, this wouldn't be applicable here because this is an actual functioning squadron that we need to run missions eventually as this carrier gets out and gets into action. But eventually, in your training groups, what you'll do is as things get more experienced, you'll release them into the pools. So, and you can tell it which pool to go into. So let's go to one of our training groups here, and we have a lot of those in San Diego, obviously, because U.S. Navy West can't get off the West Coast. So what do you do with these? Well, you can run some recon. You want to run recon with some of the squadrons, but for the most part, you're back here training. So this guy is training. He's just back here. Now, this is not a great situation because he's carrier capable. We really want this training on a carrier so that they become carrier trained. But so you got to, sometimes that's not possible, like this time. And so what are we doing here? Train 100, train escort. Current altitude, we've got it at 10,000. All right. We could take these guys all the way to 20,000. So let's do that. When we look at the aircraft data, you see these Wildcats can go all the way to 20,000 with the same maneuverability. Awesome. So let's put them at 20,000. Train 100%, training escort. Okay. We could potentially buy these out if we wanted to put them on a carrier. And so we'll get down here. I think. Well, we're not going to do it this time. You would put this in you could put it in Pacific Fleet, but the game will change it over. I think that's what I generally do. I put them in Pacific Fleet, but if they're on a carrier, the game changes it to independent. Now you can always look at your commander here. This guy's actually a really good commander. He's got an air-to-air of 63, leadership, inspiration. He's good for training these guys. Hell, I should probably have him out on the carrier. He's that good. We may release him into the pool at some point. You say, well, how does that work? Well, we've got 25 pilots here that are training on 18 aircraft. That's fine. So their fatigue level won't go up that much. You usually want to have 5 or 6 more pilots than you have planes. That way their fatigue does not get out of control. Now, a lot of times when they're training, it won't anyway. But if they're out running a lot of missions on a carrier or on land or otherwise, their fatigue can go up pretty fast if, let's say, we only had 18 pilots. Okay, so we're training all that the aircraft data we looked at for maneuverability. Then we look at the pilots, and you can see all the pilots and how they're training here. This is our leader. This is this Jack guy. We have actually some really good pilots back here with good experience, and we may want to release them into the pool at some point. I'm not going to do it this time, but as these guys train up, what you're going to want to do is take release your 5 most experienced potentially, or, and you're going to want to put them probably inactive, right? To pool active, meaning they'll automatic. If you have it automatic and they have the right stats, they will automatically replace pilots that get killed or otherwise can't fly the planes. All right, so to pool group, which would be a group just for this, you can put them in the reserves or you can put them into pool active. Okay, for now, we'll just have them in the group so they're constantly, cycling through this group, but it's fine. Eventually, we'll take the top 5 guys or so and we'll put them into active. Um, you can see here from the pool. no replacements from the pool. There's 17 pilots in the pool, but we can't get them right now. Um, this is all darkened out. I think it's maybe because I moved these guys this time. Whatever. We can't get new pilots this time. If you need to get new pilots and add to your ready and pool pilots, this is where you do it from. And we'll do that with the other squadrons. All right, so these guys are training up. That looks good. We've also got dive bombers out here that are carrier capable. So the first three groups we have here are all carrier capable, and these are the Vindicator dive bombers. All right, what do you want dive bombers doing? Well, basically, you want them on training naval attack. You can see here, naval bombing. It always tells you right under the pilots here what the pilots for this type of plane or what they're designed to do, right? So naval bombing, defensive, and land bombing. That's what these guys do, okay? Um, when it comes to the altitude for bombers, my understanding and everything I've read on the forums over the years and what people have told me that 8,000 feet is kind of considered the gold standard of bombing altitude. Okay, well, if you're out on a naval mission, it may actually be lower. But remember, these dive bombers will dive from 8,000 feet down to under 1,000 feet before they drop their either torpedoes or bombs, depending on what they're carrying. Well, these are dive bombers, so they're not going to have torpedoes. But torpedo bombers, they dive down and get down below it, the old hard deck Mav before they drop. So, if you have them up at 8,000 feet, don't think they're going to drop their bombs from there. They actually decrease in altitude quite a bit before they drop those bombs. So we've got them training naval attack. These guys are going to be on carriers, and so the naval bombing, I think, is much more important. We don't have to worry about the aircraft data. That's really for fighters and their maneuverability. Their pilots, you can see here, we said naval bombing, and that's what we're training these guys up for: defensiveness, naval bombing, and experience. And if you ever wonder, what of our training missions, what are they doing over here? Well, look at your pilot pool that you have in this group, and it'll show you what it's at least trying to make better, right? And as these guys get better, I usually like to take them out 5 pilots at a time. Once these guys get up to like a 70, we'll take them out of this group, put them in a pool, and then eventually get them worked into the actual active squadrons that are out on the front lines. All right. So that's dive bombers training naval attack. All right. These guys could also be bought out, obviously, because they're meant to be on a carrier. Same with these dauntlesses. I had them at 7,000. Let's actually take them to 8,000. Training naval attack 8,000. Range 0. Pilots, you can see they're training on naval bombing, defensive. This is just kind of if they're attacked, how defensively can they fly, and experience. And that's exactly what we want them to do for pilots for naval bombing or with dive bombers. Transport. Okay, here's a new one. This is US Air West. We could also buy this one out. It's training transport. Okay, excellent. What do transport guys need? Well, they need transport and defensive. That's pretty much it. Let's go look at the pilots. Experience, transport, defensiveness. That's what we're training them for when we're training transport. Awesome. Not much more to say there. We could eventually do the same with the pilots over here as they get enough experience and their transport score goes up. We'll release them to whichever group we think is best. We've got some more fighters here. Now, these are Texans. These are not carrier capable. You couldn't get these to fly off of a carrier no matter how much you want to. I'm actually just having these pilots train on escort. We probably could do some sweep. I probably need to do more sweep. So let's just do training sweep, actually. The sweep, I'm going to have that set at 8,000. If you watch Lodrick, he has those guys come in sometimes at 12, 14, 15,000 feet so that he's got an altitude advantage. Let's look at the Texan and see the best place to fly. You can see the Texan's not very good as it goes up in altitude. So really 10,000 feet, you don't want it to really go above that because it loses maneuverability very quickly. Now these guys are training, so it doesn't matter as much as if they were going to really be in combat. We could buy this one out, and if we just want to look, if we change within this same command within US West Coast restricted, it would cost us 9 points. If we move it out of the West Coast command into one of these others, and that's what we would do if we wanted to get it out of here, like Pacific Fleet or South Pacific, then it costs you 36 points. All right, so it costs you more, and that's just for 2 planes, so it can get very expensive. These guys are training. Let's see what they're up to. They're doing air to air defensiveness. Now, we just put them over into sweep, and so they're going to now start training on sweep. Now you can see here, because the Texan's a certain kind of plane, air and defensive are really what it likes to do. So really, cap is what the Texan would be doing a lot of, and that's what we're going to be training these pilots to do. Then we've got float planes. Now these guys, the Catalinas, are actually running recon. They're running real missions, and you can see here though it still affects the pilots and what they're training for. And so you can look at this and you say, oh, you've got it doing ASW. If you look over here, really Catalina should be doing naval search for the most part, but I've got enough naval search coming out of here that I did one of these as ASW because they've got a huge range, and with ASW it's halved, so this is going out 10 hexes, but for naval search it can go out 20. We'll think about that. But these guys are getting real world experience, if you will. You can tell I had those flying at 3,000 feet. For ASW, you usually want it to be pretty low. Uh, Patrol plane, float patrol, more Catalinas. Now these guys are actually doing naval search. If we look at the pilots, I've got those also at 3,000 feet. I want them low. I want them to see things close up. Pilots here, you can see naval search. They're also getting a little ASW, getting a little better at that. Their experience, these guys are, some of them are starting to move up turn by turn. So those are patrol planes. Then we have a true float plane, the Kingfisher. You can see the float underneath here. These guys, naval search, defensive. We've got them doing naval search. You can see the pilots here. We didn't get much done there, and our commander actually isn't very good. So, okay, more float planes, more Kingfishers, same idea. We've got them doing search. Now, they don't have as big of a radius. They've only got a maximum radius of 6, so, well, that's their extended. Their maximum is for when they jump bases. Don't forget that. Their major skill is just defensive. They're not even good at naval search, not really, but we're trying to train them up. You can see it's only a 26. They're mainly defensive planes. Now, if you ever want to know what to do with the squadron, come to the pilots and look for the averages up here, and it will tell you. I mean, this really should probably be close in doing something defensive, but we're in San Diego, so I'm not quite as worried about it. So these are all training aircraft. As you can see, most of U.S. Air Fleet West, we could buy out and change their command, right? So, eventually we may want to do that. Now let's go up here to Los Angeles and see what's going on with the planes up here. And as you can see, if we look over here to the headquarters, you can very quickly see what can be bought out from their command and what can't. If it's grayed out, it cannot. And here at Los Angeles, I have the vast majority of 4th USAAF, or United States Air Force, right? And we've got 4 U.S. Fighter Command. These are all restricted to the U.S. West Coast. They are all training aircraft for the most part. Um, Forward Air Central Pacific, these can be moved off the West Coast immediately. You can see they do not have R's behind them. These are Catalinas. I would like to get them out to Pearl Harbor. We just haven't had a chance to do that yet. And then we've got U.S. Fleet Air West. We've got some Kingfishers here. Well, shoot, those should really be in San Diego. I think that I was running out of aviation support in San Diego. And if we look, yeah, we've only got 100 there. We need 101 right now. So I kept 2 squadrons of U.S. Air Fleet West in LA. Now you can see we're running some real naval search out here with some Catalinas. The Catalinas are the best search plane you've got. They've got a huge range, 19. Let's look at the pilots. Well, we got them up to a 47. They're pretty good defensively, 55 defensive flying, and then their experience is a 51. Let's look at the number of pilots. We've got 12 planes and only 13 pilots. So let's go get a new pilot out of the replacement pool. All right, let's get a pilot there. And let's get one more. And you can see it goes up here. We've now gotten two pilots. We want defensive naval search. Let's go look and see the pilots we got this time. Can't remember. Uh, I guess I should have looked at these a little close. I'm almost certain it's probably these two guys at the bottom. Ah, shoot. Well, okay, we'll try that again as we do more. Um, So anyway, these guys are running a big naval search out here. How do I do these arcs? Usually if it's got like 12 planes, I would do this 120 degrees. So it's just like times 10 for the degrees. This one we didn't need quite as much. Usually I'd have it something like that with 12 planes. Oh, I did the wrong one. Um, let's do this 190 to 310. There we go. And now it flips over here and it gets a little more coverage. Let's just do it that way since we do have 12 planes. Um, one plane can do each one of these spokes, right? Now, if you wanted to double up on these and have two planes do each spoke, how would we do that? Well, let's go down to where it's only six on the radius, or 60, 190 to 250, and you can see these all turn black if they're going to double up. And then on over here, it would turn white. Why is that? These are all day missions. What they would fly doubly during the day. If they're flying doubly in the second pulse of the air phase, it would be white. You can look at the tutorial if you want to know more about that. A lot of you guys are experienced players, so you get the idea. Let's bump that back up to 310 though. And now you see it's nice blue and green, meaning in the first pulse in the morning they'll do this, in the afternoon they'll do this, and there's going to be one plane for each spoke. Now that's a lot of ocean for one plane. So you may want to double them up by going down to 60 or 50. That'll get all the spokes. We also have this patrol. These are again Catalinas. Now I've got these guys on ASW patrol. Again, you've got 10 planes. We could go get a pilot. Uh, let's go get these from the replacement pool. Let's go look at the pilots this time. Okay, so we've got 64, 251s, a 50, down to 47. So we've got 57 defensiveness, 51 experience. We've got naval search up to 50. We don't really want to release any of these guys. They're doing, what they're supposed to be doing. Now this time, let's get two pilots. All right, so we get two. That goes up to 12 because so we don't get too much fatigue in this group. Now let's go back and look at pilots. And sure enough, remember 47 was the lowest we have. Now we've got 39 and 35 in here, but this is very easy duty. And so we're going to start training these guys up as well. Um, right on. Oh, let's look at those guys one more time. Pilots, and you can see they've actually got a pretty decent naval search for pilots that only have this level of experience, and that is because we went and got them from the replacement pool, which is trying to feed us replacement pilots. We could also go request a veteran. Let's just go get a veteran for the hell of it. And now you can see 17 pilots that are on the list that are veterans in experience, right? These are kind of your best experience guys. Naval search. This guy's pretty good at naval search. But anyway, that's kind of how the piloting works in this game, how planes work. I can see I've almost already run out of time, so I guess I'll call this an episode. I'll probably do a second episode for the setup later. I really just wanted to talk about pilots this time. Maybe we'll go down the U.S. East Coast. I've got a lot of setup to do, and I want to get this back to Logic today. But anyway, that was just a little primer on planes and pilots. We'll obviously go much deeper into this as we go along. And during this setup, I really would like to focus on all the different air counters we've got on the map at this point. So anyway, this has been Strategy Gaming Dojo. I'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.